Beneath the crumbling timbers and rusting ore carts of long-dead mining towns, something else remains. Something older than gold, older than the rail lines, older even than the stories whispered in saloon corners and ranger stations. Along the foggy ridges and dry washes where California meets Nevada, people once dug for riches, but some found only silence and eyes in the dark. These are the forgotten encounters. Tales from the men and women who walked into the ruins of the Old West and came face to face with something that wasn't supposed to exist. Something large. Hairy. Watching. And waiting. Range Courier, Markleeville, CA. October 4, 1964. Hairy figure sighted crossing highway near midnight in storm by Reed Rogers. Night editor. A Carson Valley trucker driving over Monitor Pass during a fall thunderstorm reported nearly hitting what he thought was a man in a fur coat, until it moved like no man could. Jim Warner was making a delivery toward Bridgeport when his headlights lit up something crossing the road. It took 2 steps and cleared the whole lane. I locked the brakes, but it was gone before I stopped. Warner got out, flashlight in hand, but found nothing, except a strange, musty smell and a single print in the mud on the shoulder. Barefoot. Toes. Like something walked straight out of the forest and disappeared. Locals often dismiss the hairy man of Monitor, but Warner isn't laughing. It wasn't just a shadow. It was real, and it was walking like it belonged there. Pine Creek Report, Susanville, CA. January 9, 1962. Old Miner's Final Journal describes repeated visits by forest entity by Sally Roth, historical notes columnist when prospector Albert read. Kranz passed away last month in a Susanville hospital. His belongings included a decades-old leather journal filled with detailed notes, not just about gold strikes, but strange visitors at his remote claim near the Nevada line. Kranz had lived alone near the ruins of an 1870s gold tunnel outside Ravendale. His journal entries from the winter of 1960 describe nightly visits by something heavy that walks like a man but smells like a dead cat. He wrote of waking to find sticks arranged in shapes outside his door, stones stacked neatly, and something brushing the walls of his shack with broad hands. I hear it breathing. It don't speak, but it listens. Always outside. A final entry, dated March 3, 1961, reads simply, "It knocked 3 times tonight. Stared through the window. I ain't alone." Historians now reviewing the site found collapsed stone markers nearby, exactly as described in Kranz's account. Whether hoax or horror, no one can explain who, or what, kept Red Kranz Company in the deep snows of the Sierra. Gold Country Gazette, Downeyville, CA. June 14, 1956. Prospector claims hairy giant chased him from abandoned mine by Wesley J. Hart, mining correspondent, Downeyville, CA. Deep in the wooded canyons just north of Loyalton, near the crumbling remnants of the once booming Meeks Gulch mine, a seasoned prospector has come forward with a chilling tale that he swears is not born of fatigue, fever, or bourbon. Henry Laskin, 62, a lifelong gold panner and veteran of California's forgotten mining trails, claims that on June 10, 1956, he was chased out of the forest by a towering, foul-smelling creature that walked on 2 legs and had eyes like burning coals. "I've worked these hills since Hoover was in office," Laskin told the Gazette from his small miner's shack. "I've seen mountain lions, bears, even a naked lunatic once out by Pike's Gulch. But this thing? It weren't natural, and it sure as hell wasn't a man." According to Laskin, he was prospecting along a narrow ravine fed by a runoff creek above the Meeks Gulch Trail, an area littered with century-old mine shafts and collapsed diggings. The place, he says, is known among the older locals as Dead Echo Hollow, named for the way sounds seemed to bounce oddly between the steep rock walls. It was around dusk when the incident began. "I was packing up my pan and tin when I heard stones splashing behind me in the creek," Laskin said. "Then, this god-awful smell hit me, like wet fur, sour milk, and a skunk rolled into one. Made my stomach turn." He turned to see what he first believed was a black bear rooting near the water until it stood up. It rose up like a man, 8, maybe 9 feet tall, but wide across the chest like a stacked-up log pile. Hair all over, black with streaks of gray, like old moss. The face was the worst part. Not quite man, not quite ape. It had a brow like a rock shelf and eyes that glowed red in the low light. Not shining, glowing, like there was something burning behind him. Laskin said the creature let out a low, chesty grunt and stepped toward him, easily clearing a rock pile that would take a man 5 minutes to climb. Paralyzed with fear, Laskin dropped his pan and sprinted up the narrow trail, glancing back only once. It followed, not at full speed, but keeping up. I could hear it, heavy steps, not crashing, just solid. It didn't chase like a predator. It walked like it owned the canyon. He reached his camp, dove into his truck, and drove until he hit the first sign of town. He hasn't been back since. 2 days later, accompanied by local ranch hand Clem Torvin, Laskin returned to retrieve his gear. What they found convinced Torvin something strange was out there too. "Prints," said Torvin. "Big as pie plates, deep in the mud, with toes. 5 of them, and they were spaced apart like something with a 10-foot stride. No bear does that." Laskin's story has drawn both skepticism and quiet support. Some old-timers say the Meeks Gulch area has always had bad energy. One tale, dating back to the 1880s, tells of a mine foreman who vanished near the same ravine. His crew found his pickaxe stuck in a tree 10 feet off the ground. "I know folks'll laugh," Laskin says with a shrug. "But I know what I saw. And whatever it is, it's still up there. It don't want company." Nevada Range Reporter, Carson City, Nevada, September 3, 1961. Hunters report enormous man-beast crossing wash near Spanish mine ruins by Marla Gentry. Staff reporter, Carson City, Nevada. A routine hunting trip near the Nevada-California border has turned into a bizarre tale of fear and confusion after 2 experienced outdoorsmen witnessed a massive, hairy figure sprinting across a dry desert wash just north of the old Spanish mine ruins, west of Sweetwater Summit. Tom Berman and Leon Croft, lifelong friends and avid mule deer hunters from Gardnerville, had been camped near Dry Knife Canyon, a windswept stretch of desert scrub and granite formations dotted with abandoned mining equipment and ghost shafts from Nevada's 19th-century gold rush. "It's lonely country," said Berman. "Beautiful, but not a place you want to get stuck after dark. We were tracking a buck we'd seen that morning, following hoofprints across the wash when we saw something move up ahead. At first, I thought it was another hunter. That assumption changed within seconds. What the men saw was not human, or at least, not entirely. It stood up from behind a bush," said Croft, voice still shaken during the interview. "Not like a bear rearing. This was already upright. It took 2 strides across the open wash, and that wash is almost 25 feet across. The creature, as described by both men, was massive. At least 8 feet tall, thickly muscled, covered in dark brown hair that shimmered in the sun. It had disproportionately long arms, an odd slouch, and what Berman called a staggering stride. Graceful but wrong, like watching a bear walk like a man. The figure paused once at the far bank of the wash, turning its head toward the men, then disappeared into the pinyon pines with shocking speed and silence. We just stood there, rifles in hand, not moving, Berman recounted. If it had come for us, I don't know what we would have done. After composing themselves, the men crossed the wash to where the figure had stood. What they found left little doubt something strange had occurred. There were prints, Croft said. Clear as day in the powdery dirt. Barefoot, human-shaped but huge, like a man's foot, but too wide, with toes splayed out like it had never worn a boot. They photographed the tracks and marked the location with flagging tape. 2 days later, Croft returned with his brother and found the area undisturbed, except that the flagged markers were missing, all of them torn down. Locals familiar with the region have long whispered about the Desert Shadow, a creature said to haunt the old mine roads west of the Sweetwaters. Juan Escalante, an elderly rancher whose family ran livestock in the area for generations, offered an unsettling recollection. My abuelo used to say the mountain was cursed. He called it El Hombro del Diablo, the devil's shoulder. Said when the mines ran dry, something came up from beneath, angry that man had gone so deep. Officially, state wildlife officials dismissed the report, stating it's most likely a misidentified black bear. But the Nevada Department of Wildlife has no record of black bears in that stretch of arid desert. As for Berman and Croft? I'll keep hunting, Croft said, but not there. Not anymore. We were trespassing in something's territory. And whatever it was, it let us go. Silver Peak Observer, Hawthorne, NV, April 27, 1955. Miners report frightening nighttime intruder at Desert Shaft Camp by Conrad Mayfield. Correspondent, Hawthorne, NV. A trio of freelance miners working an old shaft near the Sweetwater Mountains, just a mile from the California-Nevada border, reported a night of escalating terror that drove them to abandon their operation. The men say they were stalked, harassed, and possibly hunted by a creature they describe as massive, upright, and not human. The incident occurred the night of April 23 at a makeshift camp beside the long-defunct Coppervale Shaft, a known site dating back to the 1870s silver boom. The three men, Lou Garvey, 39, Calvin, Dusty, Weeks, 46, and Will McNair, 32, had arrived a week prior to rework tailings and prospect deeper into the vein abandoned by earlier crews. They had encountered nothing out of the ordinary until that night. The day had been hot, windless, said Garvey. We'd had supper and turned in. It was just after midnight when something woke me, this strange rhythmic thumping. Not footsteps, more like pacing. What followed was a 4-hour ordeal of escalating sounds, shadowy glimpses, and physical signs of something large encircling their crude plywood shack. It wasn't just noise, Weeks added. Something kept brushing the walls, tapping the side of the building, real slow, like it was testing the place. McNair, the youngest of the group, was the first to look outside. What he saw made him drop his flashlight and fall back inside. It was huge, he said. Standing at the edge of the fire pit, arms too long for a man, and the smell, like rotting sagebrush mixed with wet wool. He only saw it for a few seconds before it backed into the dark, but that was enough. The men stayed awake the rest of the night, rifles in hand. Around 3 a.m., the pacing stopped, followed by a sound that all three described identically. A single, low growl, followed by a dragging noise and what sounded like a boulder being dropped nearby. We didn't sleep, Garvey said. At first light we packed what we could, left the rest, and drove out. We haven't been back. Later that week, a local rancher and former miner named Walt Fincher visited the site out of curiosity. What he found disturbed him. There were prints, Fincher confirmed. Big ones, longer than my boot, 5 toes, and they weren't bear tracks. No claw marks, just wide, flat impressions. Whatever made him was heavy. He also found a bent steel pry bar lying 20 feet from where the men said they'd left it. No man threw that, he noted. The area around the Coppervale Shaft has a history of strange stories. In 1938, a surveyor disappeared while mapping nearby claims. His body was never found, but his theodolite was recovered from a crevice nearly 60 feet from his last known position. Locals later dubbed the ravine Devil's Gullet. These mountains hold more than gold, said Fincher. Sometimes they hold secrets that don't want to be dug up. When asked if they'd return, McNair shook his head firmly. You don't walk into a place like that twice. That thing, whatever it wasn't just wandering through. It was watching us, and it didn't want us there. Motherlode Chronicle, Nevada City, California, August 12, 1963. Young couple's encounter with Shaggy Man shocks summer campers along South Yuba River by Ellen Torgerson. Features reporter, Nevada City, California. A late summer camping trip turned into a night of fear and confusion for a young couple from Grass Valley who say they were watched, stalked, and approached by an enormous creature they described as a shaggy man with intelligent, animal eyes, near the ruins of an old mining outpost along the South Yuba River. Harold Kent, 24, and his fiancée, Betty Langford, 21, were spending the weekend near a secluded bend in the river downstream from the ghost town of Washington, California. The area, a known haven for rustic campers and gold panners, is laced with remnants of long-forgotten diggings, sluices, and stone foundations choked in blackberry bramble. It was our first trip alone up there, said Langford. We wanted to get away from town, just us, the stars, and the water. The couple pitched their tent mid-afternoon and spent the day hiking and swimming. The strange events began as dusk settled and they were roasting marshmallows beside their small fire. We heard splashing behind us, said Kent, not far upstream. At first I thought it was a deer coming to drink, then it stopped. Just total silence. And then we heard breathing. Heavy, wet breathing, as both described it. Kent shined his flashlight toward the sound. That's when they saw it. It was crouched low on the rocks across the river, Langford said, her voice trembling. Not a bear. It was shaped like a person, but its arms were too long, and it was covered in thick hair, not fur, but like a shaggy dog that had never been brushed. The creature, they say, did not appear afraid or hostile, but observant. It sat back on its haunches for nearly 30 seconds before slowly standing, towering over the riverbank. It then turned and disappeared into the trees without a sound. The couple remained frozen until Kent doused the fire, and they rushed to pack their gear by lantern light. We hiked out by moonlight, Kent said. Didn't wait for morning. I kept looking back the whole way. Never saw it again, but we heard a rock fall behind us, like it was trailing just far enough back. They returned the next day with Kent's brother and a local guide. At the site, they found impressions on the rocks where the creature had crouched, wide, foot-shaped depressions in the sandy bank, nearly 18 inches long, with visible toe marks. Even more disturbing, a crude pile of rocks and twigs stacked near their fire ring, which neither of them had made. When contacted, the Sierra County Sheriff's Office declined to investigate, but a local historian and wilderness tracker, Clyde Messenger, says he's heard of similar sightings for years in the stretch between Washington and the Emerald Pools. The old miners used to call it the Wild Watcher, Messenger said. Some say it was a man left behind from a tribe no one remembers. Others say it's a spirit that guards the gold that was never found. Whatever it is, it's not new. Betty Langford has since declined further interviews. She reportedly refuses to camp anywhere without full cell signal and backup. As for Harold Kent, he remains convinced it was not a hoax. Whatever it was, it knew we were there. It was curious, and it let us see it. I think it wanted us to leave, not because it was angry, but because we didn't belong. Comstock Ledger, Virginia City, Nevada, November 21, 1960. Trapper claims, massive upright creature. Approached snowbound cabin during storm by Clark Vernon. Rural Affairs, Virginia City, Nevada. A seasoned fur trapper says he came within yards of a massive, upright creature during a freak early winter blizzard in the high country near the California border. A chilling experience that has left him questioning everything he thought he knew about the wilderness. Elmer Dowd, 58, a no-nonsense mountain man who has lived off the land for over 3 decades, reported the encounter from his winter cabin nestled in the shadow of Mono Peak, west of Walker Lake. The cabin, built near the ruins of an old silver mine shaft, sits at 7,400 feet elevation and is reachable only by pack trail. Dowd had stalked the cabin for winter in late October and rode in ahead of the season's first snow. I was planning on staying up there 3, maybe 4 weeks. Run the trap lines, skin what I needed, read some Zane Grey, then haul out before it got too bad, he said. But on November 17, a surprise blizzard rolled through the high valleys. Dowd found himself snowed in early, with 5 feet of snow and no way out. It was bad. Visibility dropped to nothing. The world went dead quiet. Then came the sounds. He first noticed something strange that night. His sled dog, a veteran husky named Duke, refused to go outside. He growled low and stiffened, ears flat, tail down. That dog's faced mountain lions and worse. I knew then something was off. Just before midnight, Dowd heard heavy footfalls circling the cabin. Not plodding, but methodical. It wasn't a 4-legger. This was bipedal. You know the rhythm. 1-2, 1-2. Heavy, slow steps, deliberate. It circled twice, then stood still at the back wall. What followed was a scraping noise along the logs, as if a large hand, not claws, was brushing the cabin's side. I held my breath. I didn't move. I could hear it breathing, deep and rough, like a furnace on low flame. Then something pressed against the door, just one long shove. The whole frame creaked. Dowd grabbed his rifle but didn't fire. I wasn't sure what I'd hit, or if I'd want to. That thing was old. Not just old in age, but old in feel. Like it didn't belong to our time. After 10 minutes, the presence moved away. Dowd stayed awake the rest of the night. In the morning, the storm had lightened. What he saw outside made his hands shake. There were prints in the snow, big ones. I measured one with my boot, almost 19 inches long, splayed toes, and no shoe tread. Each one sunken deep, like a person weighing 500 pounds. The trail led to the edge of the slope above the mine shaft, where it disappeared over the ledge. Dowd believes it had been watching him for days. He also discovered the deer carcass he had hanging outside, gutted and cleaned earlier, was gone. No drag marks. Just gone. I don't think it was hungry. I think it was curious. It took the deer like a token, maybe even a warning. Local rangers dismissed Dowd's story as snow confusion or bear misidentification, but many in the surrounding valleys, especially among the Washoe and Paiute communities, have heard similar stories going back generations. They call it the Old One, said Thomas Wada, a Washoe elder from the Colville area. It comes down when the wind carries the first snow, when men are trapped, alone. It does not kill, but it reminds. Dowd rode out on snowshoes 2 days later, reaching town with frostbitten fingers and a weary dog. He has no plans to return to that cabin next year.